Hey everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video. And yesterday we took a look at my June 2020 standard tier list for the Hearthstone season, and today we are going to look at the wild tier list. So again, like yesterday, I'll be ranking decks by tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1 being the best undisputed decks in the game in terms of like high legend, all that stuff. Tier 2 will be very, very strong decks that are just a notch below, that kind of have a bad matchup spread, basically against the Tier 1 stuff, or at least struggle against a good amount of it. And then we have Tier 3, which are legend-capable decks that are very good, but not exactly like the pinnacle, have the best spread against everything, and particularly struggle against the higher-ranked decks. So I think we'll keep it like yesterday. I'm going to keep it to 9 decks. There's actually a lot more decks that we could talk about. But I'm one man, this is one video, so, you know, we'll keep it to a more reasonable list, but always feel free to check out other tier lists and all that stuff if you want more details on other decks. But this will be my personal opinions on what the 9 best decks are, and again, if you disagree with me, let me know in the comments, all that stuff. It's always a interesting debate to have. So, like yesterday, let's start with tier... So, let's start with kind of like the last list, or first tier 3 deck, more of an honorable mention, probably not the best deck out there, but I had some success with it. I've seen other people have success with it at a higher rank, so you never know, but I'll put it on here, and that's Big Shaman. Yet another big mana cheat deck. That's good and wild? No way. Yeah, the deck's kind of surface is a new power out there. The new Scrapyard Colossus card in the latest set really kind of helped put this over the top. Basically, let it live. You can cheat them out with your Ancestor's Call, your Eureka, your Muck Morpher, and then of course you have like Walking Fountain for heal. You have Colossus of the Moon for those slower matchups where it's just an unkillable giant minion. But yeah, and Vivid Spores, which is another way of resurrecting these minions if they're on the board. Very high roll in nature. It needs to kind of win like turn 3, 4, 5 with your massive mana cheat that a deck can't overcome. But it struggles immensely against decks like Raza Priest out there, which can just Psychic Scream or just Zephyrus or Shadow or Death, or they have a lot of answers for this stuff, and it's a very popular deck, and if you don't get that perfect early hand against aggro, you're kind of dead as well. But the deck can do some pretty cool stuff. It's very fun to play, and can lead to some pretty spectacular moments. So I wanted to put on the list. Probably won't make next month's, but give it some love, give it some attention. Next, I have a deck that I have been playing a lot, attempting to refine. I think it's very underrated in the meta. But we have Togg, Druid. This deck, at least my version, runs absolutely no new cards from the set, but it just does a great job of gaining a lot of armor, building taunts, stealing your opponent's win condition with your Togg, Azalina combo, and just, yeah, doing really good stuff. It does very well against, like, Pirate Warrior. It farms Raza Priest. It just really, really struggles with Cubelock and like any Warlock deck and Quest Mage, which are very popular. So if it wasn't for those decks, it would do quite a bit well. But also, if it did do better, people would run a lot more stuff like Dirty Rat, which just destroys the deck. But overall, I'm doing very well. I hit top 100 with it last season. This season, I'm like 70% so far, and it's doing very well. I think the deck is underrated, and I don't think my list is refined quite yet. I'm wondering if we could sneak in Overgrowth or something like that. I just really like to blossom into Summon, so I'm kind of keeping that going. But yeah, deck's very strong, and again, another super fun one to play. Just stealing your opponent's deck can lead to the craziest things you've ever seen, and yeah, leads to pretty awesome games. So I'm going to put it on the list, and I'm not putting Jade Druid on the list. I think Jade Druid is complete garbage in comparison. You need a real win condition in Wild. With all the hyper-aggressive combo decks, you need a win condition that competes. And stealing your opponent's deck does compete. Building green men, not so much. And the last deck I will put on the tier 3 list is another kind of newly popularized deck, is Reno Pocket Galaxy Mage. This is just another super mana cheat deck where you try and get your Pocket Galaxy and do all the 1-mana minion stuff. You have Ice Block, you have Zephyrus, you have Reno, Dragon Queen, Reno the Relicologist, you have all the good anti-aggro stuff. As long as you draw it, you can win, and then you can scam literally any deck in the game if you get your early pocket with Dragoncaster, with Toldorm Pilgrim, and then like Chain, Brand, Lotheb, Barista, Zola, all that stuff. A lot of people have done very well with this deck, but again, it can suffer from dealing with hyper aggro, and like Raza Priest can be a bit of a bitch, and Quest Mage. So there's a lot of problems on the higher on the higher deck matchmaking, but can really abuse the other stuff. And overall, it's a very strong deck. So that's the tier 3 decks. Let's move on to tier 2. What are my tier 2 decks? Well, tier 2 consists of 2 Warlock decks, in my opinion. We're going to start with the first one, which is Mechathunlock Warlock. It didn't die with the Bloodbloom nerf like a lot of people like myself thought it would. Kelsoth kind of kept it alive, as you can still play Dollmaster Dorian Plot Twist and cheat out the combo with your Kel'Thas getting you your gets your Cataclysm for 0 mana, and you win the game. So you just try and hem it and draw your deck, and you have the best... Warlock still has the best board clears in the game with Defile and Plague of Flames and all of that. So yeah, deck's very strong. It can just, again, suffer from dealing with a bit of hyper aggro, and is usually too slow to beat something like Quest Mage, and it can really suffer from rat problems, but the deck has performed very well across the board, and is definitely a solid one. A lot more consistent than the tier 3 decks I mentioned, and can be very powerful. Next on the list, the other Warlock deck is Cubelock. This has been a staple basically ever since Voidlord was created, and Skull of Manari and all that. And yes, you cheat out giant demons. You Void Caller into Voidlord, or the new demon, Dreadlord there, the 8 mana 5/7 that gets you a 5/5 lifesteal demon. Or you can play Doomguards as well, and you have like Expired Merchant, where you can get like 2, 3 more N'Zoths or more Guldans, whatever you want, depending on your list. And yeah, the deck can just do insane stuff. It's very hard to deal with Skull the Manari without weapon removal, and when you're cheating out Voidlords, Mal'Ganis, all of that, it's really difficult. But the deck can suffer from inconsistent early game, can get aggroed down, and it can get comboed out by decks like Reno Priest and Quest Mage. So it has its issues, but overall, still a powerhouse out there, can still do a lot of good stuff. It's just at like the highest of Legend, I find it's a pretty volatile deck. But for the average player playing to Legend or playing on the Legend ladder, I think it's a very, very strong deck, hence the tier 2 spot. Last on the list, and might surprise some people, I am putting Quest Mage as tier 2 and not tier 1. I do think Quest Mage is probably the best deck in the game in Wild, but because it's the best, it is super hard targeted by hyper aggro, as you'll see in the tier 1 list. It destroys decks like Reno Priest. It really does well against like Cubelock, Mechathunlock, but against the aggro decks, it's the same problem as it was before the Quest nerf. This has nothing to do with the Quest nerf. That basically made it irrelevant. All the Quest nerf did for Quest Mage was make the meta even more hard warped around it, because it's so undisputedly the best. You just have to play the decks to beat it, or else why are you playing? Similar to Demon Hunter in Standard. But in comparison to Demon Hunter in Standard, the hard counter to Demon Hunter isn't that great a hard counter. In Wild, aggro has always been a very good hard counter to Quest Mage. So Quest Mage revolves around you taking an extra turn and killing your opponent with 0 mana giants, and you also of course have your Apprentice and Flamewaker Cyclone turns, cheap spells, insane damage you can pull off with that. But again, it typically loses to early aggression, and that's a problem for it. So I'm putting it at tier 2. Still, one of the best decks out there. You can definitely get rank 1 Legend with it if you're a good pilot. But for the average player and all of that, with the way people are hyper targeting it, I just can't put it tier 1. Just a notch below. But I still, despite that, will call it the best deck in Wild. It's just the meta has completely warped around it. So play it at your own risk. It's super good, and you get just any of the right matchups, you're gonna just slam dunk people. And yes, it can beat aggro, obviously. Just consistently, it's never been able to do that. And on to the tier 1 decks. What are they? Well, let's start with the only non-aggro one on the list, and I'm gonna give this to Reno Priest, which I actually think is a worse deck than Quest Mage. But in this meta of a lot of hyper aggro, and you got Warlocks and all that, Reno Priest just does a better job against the spread. You want to play your Raza, making your hero power cost 0. You want to play your Anduin, so you get 0 mana to deal 2 damage every time you play a card. And you have all your anti-aggro board clears. You've got Zephrys, you've got Reno and Dragon Queen. However you built it, you can make it more combo heavy to burst your opponent down. All that stuff. The deck is very powerful across the board. It gets destroyed by Quest Mage, for sure. And Togg Druid, if you're playing it like me, which is like probably like 2 or 3 people. But overall, it has a very good matchup spread. And because people are so hard targeting Quest Mage, it does a great job of countering the hard target. So, let's take a look at the 2 hard targets to Quest Mage that are the tier 1 decks. First being awDuLYDAA. This deck has been nerfed a bunch in basically the crossfires of the standard nerfs. Most recently, the biggest one to it was Priestess of Fury, which now is, instead of a 7 mana 6/7, it's a 6/5, which has made it more vulnerable, but still sees play in a lot of the lists I've seen, and still performs very well. It's the most popular deck in Wild. It's like Odd Paladin all over again. It's completely shut decks out, like even Shaman out, because, well, they can't stick a totem ever against that hero power, and it kills Quest Mage, so it's a great matchup for that. You have your infinitely scaling 1-drops, you have Mana Burn, you have Loatheb, Leroy, give my meta, like, just all the damage, all the, like, the mana disruption, spell disruption. It's a great counter to it, and it can beat up on a lot of stuff. So, awDuLYDAA, very powerful, aggressive deck, but more, for me, it's more of like, because of Quest Mage and what it can do to it, it helps it a lot. And the top deck that I will rate for Wild right now is Pirate Warrior, is the top tier 1 deck. One of the most popular as well, probably either the most popular or the second most popular after awDuLYDAA. And again, super aggressive deck, play your early pirate, smork your opponent down, and with the recent addition of Corsair Cache to the game, getting your Ankar has never been easier, and once you get it going with Upgrade and Cultist and all of that, it's almost impossible to remove. It draws your deck, it deals an insane amount of damage, and can just curb stomp the crap out of cards like, or decks like Quest Mage, and like the Warlock decks it beats up on and all of that. Yeah, it could struggle against like Druid, like I've been playing. It could struggle against Reno Priest and things like that. But overall, it can beat absolutely anything, is a powerhouse, and definitely keeps Quest Mage in check. So, that is my Wild tier list. Again, let me know if you disagree or agree in the comments, anything. I'm always open for debate, or like just love reading the comments. They were really interesting on the last video. And yeah, you guys seem to really respond well to the tier list. I'll probably keep doing this as a monthly thing. So look out for next time. Make sure you like the video and subscribe so you can follow for this content that I keep providing daily. And we'll definitely follow up next month with some more tier lists. Have a great day. Stay salty, my friends.